There's a trail near my house. It winds through a small park and then into a narrow strip of woods before running along a field beside a housing division. From there, it goes past the cornfield and then loops through the woods again. There's a pond at the fork where the loop begins. It's covered in water lilies and they bloom white and pink in the spring. And there's a stone, flat-topped and broad, upon which people leave coins or trinkets as they enter the woods. I remember as a child being given a dime by my parents and told to place it on the stone. For the fairy of the woods, they said, so she'd bless us with luck. Then I got older and the story changed. She was a witch or a ghoul or some other evil dead thing. The gifts were no longer a luck charm, but tribute to appease her hatred. Those that failed to leave an offering didn't make it out of the woods. My friends and I ride our bikes along the trail often. It's packed dirt and gravel, and it's cooler underneath the shade of the trees. We all stop at the fork and leave something on the stone, like our parents taught us, and like everyone else that walks this trail. Even runners in their spandex and water bottles find a pocket to slip a shiny rock or a quarter into to leave behind. Everyone in town knows about the tradition. Last month, we stopped, and Kyle was the first to approach the stone. He didn't leave anything, however. He swept his hand along the top, sliding everything that was on it off and into his cupped palm. Then, he poured the trove of coins and random junk into his pockets. I asked him what he was doing. My heart was beating faster just watching him, thinking of the woman in the woods. Watching, surely watching, as he stole what was hers. You know someone is coming out here and taking this, right? He said. It's clean every morning. I'm probably doing them a favor by helping get the junk out of here. It was implied that whoever collected the offerings every night was a normal person, not a witch, not a ghoul. I felt like I was in grade school again, when the older students were telling us that we knew Santa was just our parents, right? And no one wanted to be the one to sound stupid by disagreeing, even though we hadn't known, and the magic was now ruined. Then he got on his bike again, and we were left to follow. I hesitated, thinking about the broken hair clip in my pocket, the metallic rainbow butterfly that I thought was pretty enough to leave behind. My other friends were moving on though, without leaving anything. And I didn't want to be the only superstitious one, so I kept the hair clip in my pocket. We left the woods without incident, and I thought that was proof that Kyle was right, that it was just some silly game that everyone played along with because it was fun. Like how we still left cookies for Santa, although now we left a Dr. Pepper instead of milk, because Dad really likes Dr. Pepper. Kyle used the money collected to buy a candy bar from the gas station on the way home. I was angry because he refused to share any money with the rest of us, and we had to go without. We had a new tradition after that. Kyle would stop and collect all the offerings from that stone when we entered the woods, and we'd parcel them along the group outside the gas station. If there was enough to buy candy, we'd go inside. Otherwise, we'd take our stolen spoils home and maybe throw out the junk. I kept a lot of it in a shoebox under my bed. I like to collect things. My mum says I'm a pack rat, like my dad. A week ago, Maria told me something strange happened while she was in the woods. She was with her parents on an evening walk, and she'd noticed that the trees were all silent. There were no birds, and the air was still. Her parents didn't seem to notice anything odd, but she started looking around, peering into the trees and the growing shadows in the brush. And she thought she saw something. A hunched figure, white, scuttling along the ground. It was large, far too large to be a dog. She grabbed her dad's sleeve and pointed it out to him. He peered into the woods, didn't see anything, and then stepped off the trail to investigate. Maria stood close to her mother's side and waited while he wandered through the trees for a moment, scanning his surroundings, before returning to tell her that he hadn't seen anything. Probably a raccoon, he suggested. She couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched, however, and the next time we all went along the trail, she refused to take her share of the money, and Kyle kept it for himself. Then, 4 days ago, we all saw her. The woman in the woods. We'd made a habit of going on the loop almost every day, as we were giddy with all the coins and neat things we were taking from the stone. Some of it was junk, like beer bottle caps, but there were always coins, and sometimes there was something interesting, like a chunk of quartz or a cheap metal bracelet. We were halfway through the loop, about to hit the shallow downhill portion. Kyle was in front, his pockets heavy with a stolen offering. The woods were quiet, as it was not very large and there wasn't a lot of wildlife living in it. Then I heard a branch snap, like it was right over my shoulder, and I instinctively turned to look. All my friends pivoted as well, half standing on our bikes to turn around. We'd all heard it. A woman on the trail. Her hair was matted, her head was bowed so we couldn't see her face, and she wore a dirty white dress that stopped at her knees, the hemline tattered and trailing threads. Her hands hung loose at her side. None of us said anything. We didn't need to. As one mind, we all turned back around and bent over our handlebars. I pushed down as hard as I could, my breath caught in my chest, trying to get my bike going faster than it already was. The downhill helped. I shifted into my higher gear, hit my top speed, and we raced for the end of the loop and the trail that would take us out of the woods. I looked back once. The woman stood on the trail, the same distance away as she had been before. I thought, this is impossible. And that was the only thing I remember thinking, like it's frozen in perfect clarity in my mind. The image of that woman standing there on the trail. We didn't stop until we were at the park and there were other people around. Only then, once we were across the wood bridge, did we stop. We spread out, jumping off our bikes and dropping them into the grass, panting and shaking with exertion. I hadn't ever rode my bike that hard. The air burned in my throat, and I desperately wanted something to drink. It was Maria that said we had to take it back. That we angered the woman in the woods, and she wouldn't forgive us unless we took it back and apologized. That started a fight. Kyle said we were just being cowards, that we hadn't seen anything weird, that it had just been someone out running, and we were all letting our imaginations get the better of us. And we all fell to our own thoughts. Maria wanted to return it all. Stephen thought that maybe this was a warning, and we should maybe just not take any in the future. And Matt just didn't ever want to go into the woods again. Kyle finally grabbed his bike, yanked it upright, and jumped on. He pedaled off while we yelled at him to come back and took all the stolen tribute with him. I went into the woods 2 days ago. I'm not certain why. I thought I had to prove to myself what happened was real or not. I didn't leave anything behind on the stone. I think I was daring the woman to come out, to let me see her again, so I could know that she hadn't been some trick of my mind, that she was real. I was biking along at a good clip, trying to keep enough speed so that I wouldn't struggle to really accelerate if I had to in a pinch. Then, something moved on the trail ahead of me. Something small and thin and quick, and I braked hard, turning my bike sideways and dragging my foot on the ground to stop. It was a tiny garden snake. I'd been about to run it over. I put down the kickstand and went over to herd it off the trail. I like snakes. I want one as a pet, but my parents keep telling me the cats will kill it. It slithered away from me, off into the grass, and then into the leaves. Satisfied, I looked up at the woods in front of me. The woman stood just yards away. She didn't move, and I stared at her matted grey-brown hair and her paunchy white flesh, like she'd been left out in the rain too long. The woods were silent. There were no birds, and the only sound I heard was my own breathing. Finally, I took a step backwards. She took a step forward. And then my nerve broke, and I turned and ran for my bike, jumping on it and trying to accelerate as fast as I could, fighting the gears to gain speed. I saw the woman out of the corner of my eye. She was on all fours, and she seemed to flow across the ground, pulling herself along with long fingers, and her legs were skewed like a spider. Dry branches broke as she charged through them, and I heard her racing after me, and I thought she was gaining, and I wanted to cry. My heart hammered in my chest. And then, silence. And I realized I'd blown past the entrance to the loop and was on the trail back to the park. I glanced back and saw nothing behind me. I called everyone when I got home, told them we weren't imagining things and to please stay out of the woods. Maria promised she would, and she sounded earnest. The others were more uncertain. But Kyle laughed and told me to stop making up stories. Yesterday, Kyle went missing. I heard the police downstairs an hour ago, talking to my parents. They wanted to know if I'd been with him earlier today, and they said no, that I'd been home all day, helping with the garage sale. I didn't go downstairs to tell them what really happened, that he'd refused to listen to me, that he thought we were just imagining all of this, and that he'd gone out to the trail to prove that we were wrong and take the tribute all for himself. My parents told me later that they were trying to find Kyle and that he was probably okay, that sometimes kids ran off sometimes, but they wanted me to not go anywhere alone for a bit, just in case. I typed all this up yesterday, and it's just been sitting here in Google Drive while I debated on whether or not to post it. I'm posting it now from my phone because I want someone to know what happened, in case I don't come back. I didn't listen to my parents. I told them Maria was outside and we were going to ride bikes together, and then I ran into the garage before they could see I was lying and got my bike. I had the shoebox with all the tribute I'd amassed under my arm, along with a roll of quarters to make up for what I'd spent. I went to the shrine. I dumped all of this out onto the stone. I thought maybe she'd understand that I was sorry and wanted to make up for not leaving offerings earlier. I've been kneeling in the grass for 20 minutes, staring at my phone. My knees hurt and my feet have fallen asleep, but I'm terrified to move. There's a hand on my shoulder. The fingers are long and bony, the nails yellow, and wet dirt clings to the white skin. The forest is silent, and the only thing I can hear is my own breathing. I'm going to post this. Then I'm going to stand up and turn around.